finally, I've reached a point in my career when a client complains to me about why it's taking so doggone long to do their project. I actually have someone else to blame. I can start pointing fingers at the COVID material shortage and excuse me, the city inspectors and all kinds of stuff. It's really nice. Today's first guest is Phil Crone. He's the executive officer of the Dallas Builders Association here in Dallas, Texas, in Plano, actually. And Phil is all over the news, all over the country, because Dallas is the hot spot for building. And we are having huge issues all over the place like everyone else. Welcome to the show, Mr. Crone.
Alex, happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see you. So what we were going to talk about today is that although building lumber has been like the big discussion with cost and delays and getting it and stuff, that's not the only thing.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's interesting because everybody follows the lumber futures chart to almost impart that on the entire supply chain and every single material that's out there. But when you look at the numbers, it's kind of stark here. There's so many things, obviously, material-wise, that go into a house. And just over the last 12 months, drywall's up 15%, concrete's up 12%, millwork's up 20%. Asphalt's up 10%, and overall materials are up a third if you don't count lumber. Mm-hmm. Lumber went up it basically tripled from the beginning of the pandemic.
Is this inflation, or is this just the building industry?
It's interesting, mainly on lumber, but also everything else. We just saw, obviously, a year ago, March and April, everyone's like, oh man, what's going on? Where are we going? Kind of tighten things down, close the factory.
Lots of predictions.
Yeah, and then also the demand in it. The demand came back right after that happened. We realized we were going to be in this thing for a long time, and they haven't been able to keep up since. And there's probably a few not letting a good crisis go to waste, but they just haven't been able to keep up with the incredible demand that we've seen, not just in the DFW area, but across the country.
Nationally, well, probably globally, I would imagine. But the materials the things that we talk about, the headliners, have been the lumber because it was so obvious. But then, as I've talked to builders around the country and on this show, I have learned some things, and you're talking about some people not letting a crisis get wasted. I talked to some folks in Colorado, and in this particular community, they are charging builders $70,000 for a water tap. $70,000, and it's just, and their attitude is, we'll just build it into your cost. And these are the type of things that are really driving this industry into a major slowdown and preventing a lot of people from being able to even qualify to build a house.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of regulatory challenges out there. I kind of get a little bit of therapy every time I get to talk to my colleagues that are on the coast, because it's way better here than it is there. But it's a cautionary tale, because you see some of these things, some of these attitudes in a few cities that just want to have homes priced at a certain amount, and some are even implying they want to make sure the right kind of people are moving there, which is really concerning. And those type of things, we know where this goes, and we know what happens to pricing when there's a shortage.
We've had this discussion all the years that I've been in this business, from time to time, where when a developer comes into and meets with a planner with the city, and they want to bring in a housing development, and they start adding, and particularly when it's a real high volume building environment, the city, it's real tempting for them to just start piling on fees and raising fees and trying to make up some money or take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, and that's why, the good side of things is there are a lot of cities in this area, and there are a lot of ways that there's almost a competition of sorts between them. And the ones that win are the ones that have certainty. You know who you're dealing with, even if they're tough standards. You know how long it's going to take, you know how much it's going to cost, and you know that you're not going to go through the ringer like you do in some places. And that's part of what our association does, is we try to foster those relationships and really let people know what it looks like on our side of the counter. We're trying to build affordable homes
and
for
that's
everybody.
what a building association. Now we talk about this on this show. Last week I had Carol Longacre on, and we were talking about a reason to hire a builder that's involved in the local trade association. And one of the biggest things, and I told the story about how I used to complain that they would make changes to the building code, and I was the last one to find out. I didn't find out till the inspector got there. And so I would go, okay, who's sent it? Well, you honestly, they never send those things out. They send it to the local building association or builders association, and the builders association then tells its members, or you just do like I did and get a red tag. And so, and my point with all this is that you're in touch with not only local builders, businesses, and the cities, but you're national. I mean, you guys have a lot of community. You understand the big picture.
Yeah, we're looking out there with our National Association, NHB, our State Association, Texas Association of Builders, and just trying to keep our head on a swivel. And there are a lot of things coming from Washington, coming from Austin, coming from your local city hall government that if you're not looking for it, then, you know, one of our old members always says, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And, you know, we could be a delicious treat for some of these people.
That is actually. And he's right.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right. What should a homeowner, in your view, in your long range look, what do you think homeowners should expect maybe in the next couple of quarters?
Well, I think for all the homeowners out there, the biggest challenge that you have is kind of what I mentioned before. It's certainty, or the lack thereof. And you need to find a builder who will just have an honest conversation about how hard things are to get, what the cost variables are, and set a honest timeline. There are things you can do in terms of ordering things early on because supply chains are way backed up. Order things, make your selections early on, and have a backup plan, have a contingency, because it's almost like we're playing whack-a-mole right now, and that's what I've been telling the news, just with different things that are popping up and different challenges. And everything, we're seeing this in all parts of society. Things are taking a lot longer. They're a lot more tedious to do.
The world's changed.
And we just have to, best we can, roll with the punches there.
I was talking to a builder friend of mine the other day, and he's got, they get way into the building process. They've got the house built. They've got the walls up and the roof on, and they may have it insulated and sheetrocked, and then they order their wood floor, and they can't get their wood flooring or their brick, or it's different things at different times. And it just puts a kibosh on anything you're doing. And you can drive around town and you see houses just sitting unfinished. And every time I do that, I'm like, oh, I can look at them and go, oh, they're waiting on windows. Or they're waiting on, I'm laughing. They don't think it's funny because it's costing the builder money. It's costing the bank, or really the home buyer, money, because everybody's paying interest on that money.
Yeah, and you look at a lot of, maybe for the previous 20 years, everyone, in terms of supply chain, it was just-in-time delivery. Let's get it in right as we can get it out. I think that certainly has come back to bite us, and we'll probably see people shift to a just-in-case type of delivery in terms of what they look at in their supply chain and all the contingencies. We're seeing it from semiconductors all the way down to refrigerators, lighting fixtures, all the components that go into a home right now.
This seems to me that it started with COVID. Was it happening before that, or did COVID? I mean, COVID stopped so many people dead in their tracks in factories and people that provide these materials. That seems to have at least started this chain of events, and nobody's been able to catch up.
We've seen some cautionary tales out there with, you would see what lumber would do if you had a hurricane come through. You'd have, fluctuations in drywall and concrete, but never everything all at once tied to the same global, national, or global disaster in terms of a pandemic here. And that really, I think, is hit home. And just as maybe our grandparents acted a certain way because they went through the Depression, I think we're going to act a certain way going forward in terms of how do we deal with supply chains and how do we think of these contingencies to make sure that we have what we need to get the job
Well,
done.
and as a business, as a builder or a business person, you're having to sort of almost revisit the way you've been doing business. Things are so different,
Oh, yeah.
and you're having to make adjustments on the run. That's never easy for anybody. I don't care what the industry is. So let's talk a few minutes. We got about 5 minutes left. Let's talk about permitting issues in the city of Dallas. It's Phil's favorite subject. He loves going on the news and telling them the big problems.
What a mess. I don't like going on the news. I don't like talking about it. I'm frankly tired of talking about it, but unfortunately that is, especially for everybody that's building and remodeling in Dallas, the biggest challenge right now, where before, gosh, you could walk in 2 to 3 hours, sometimes less, and get a building permit after you bring in your plans, and it was a shining star, better than any other city. And now you saw it devolve in January back to 15 weeks, got a little better in the spring, and now it's kind of creeping back up to the 8, 9, 10 week time frame. And we've got some changes in the work. It's basically 1A and 1B with council right now in terms of public safety and fixing
It's sort
this.
of like they got off track and they weren't ever able to get back on track. That seems to be what happened. I'm just, and I realize, I mean, in all fairness to everybody, this is just the way the world, this is what happened. Basically, I guess 2 years ago now, starting. Everybody sort of had to start making well, it's one thing if you're a business and you've got somebody in place that can say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. But when you're a city, or you're a department in a city, a bureaucracy, basically, it is not easy. I mean, there is so many pieces to that puzzle, and none of them fit.
Despite their best efforts. Yeah.
I mean, they're trying. They don't want this, but I'm still getting phone calls from inspectors that are going, "What about this? What about this?" from 18 months ago, and I go, "I don't know. I couldn't get you people on the phone. I don't know."
Yeah, they're flying blind because a big aspect of this is their system, which is called Project Docs, is just, in terms of the way it was rolled out, an abject failure. And you're only as good as the data that you have,
Right.
whether you're a city, whether you're a private business. And if your system's not getting the job done, and we knew, in hindsight, that this was going to be a problem because the IT department set it up instead of from a user experience standpoint. And, here we are with a big mess to fix. And it's, on one hand, a people problem, and there's got to be accountability there and a reimagination of how they do business. But if you don't have the program to get the data in and to facilitate this when circumstances require you to do it more socially distant, you're in a bad way.
Well, and a lot of the cities and I know a lot of the companies that I was dealing with as a contractor were working from their trucks. No one could go into the office. And this just created a mass confusion on everything. I mean, you can just imagine how hard that is on somebody. So going forward, do you have any feel for, or have they given you any indications how long? Or it seems like they keep trying things, and then they move a little forward, and then they have a step back.
Yeah, I don't have a sense of when I can tell you, hey, it's going to go back to maybe a week or two, but we did, in a memo a couple weeks ago, lay out very concisely 6 fixes that they can really consider, and chief among them is to get more players on the field, get more help in here in terms of private parties, third parties.
But they're reaching out to you, and which is really vital.
Yeah.
They're reaching out to their clients.
And that's good. It perhaps took us a lot of those media interviews and making a lot of noise to make it happen.
That's
but
what we're there for.
That's what the association's there for.
Right.
So they're not mad at, first name, last name custom homes
Uh-huh.
for being the squeaky wheel. We're doing it on behalf of everybody. It's in
Right.
our membership.
How are your builders feeling?
I think they're frustrated right now just with the city itself and all the things that we just talked about, because it's that lack of certainty on the materials front, and it's that lack of accountability when it comes to the permitting stuff. I mean, you think about, you and I are sitting here having a conversation that is much more in-depth than what we'd have over a Zoom screen or over the phone. And
Right,
when you're looking across
right.
the counter from somebody who just wants to do business with the city,
Mm-hmm.
you're more inclined to help them. It's just human nature. It's not anything unique to Dallas. It's just,
Yes.
that's what we've been missing in a lot of aspects of society here.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what I was going to touch on. I think our whole world went digital, and all of a sudden, boy, you can see the results of it. After this amount of time. So appreciate you coming in and spending time with us. It's always great. It's always great
Anytime.
having
Yeah,
you.
hopefully next time we're not talking about permitting anymore.
Yeah,
but
maybe
we'll see.
we're talking about the boom. Phil Crone with Dallas Builders Association. Next up is a remodeling expert. At least he says he is. My good friend Bruce Graff. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.